It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV again, Barrister Inibehe Effiong.
Thank you for having me.
We're looking at the issue, just concluded elections in Osun State, which INEC declared inconclusive. And INEC has come under knocks because of that. Some have asked the PDP to challenge the legality of this declaration. From your perspective and as a legal practitioner, what INEC did, is it consistent with law?
Let me start by saying that the election in Osun State, the inconclusive election, is a remarkable improvement from elections that had been conducted over the years by INEC. We can see clearly that incidences of violence were drastically reduced. No reported case of death, cases of hijacking of ballot papers, election materials, harassment of electoral officers were minimized. To that extent, the credibility of the election has improved, save for the now notorious issue of vote buying. On the question of the legality of the action by INEC and whether PDP ought to challenge it, the point should be noted that issues arising from election can only be contested at the tribunal, at the election tribunal, by virtue of section 285 of the Constitution. It is not for regular courts to determine. And the jurisdiction of tribunals, the gubernatorial or governorship election tribunal, is only activated upon the declaration of a winner. Until a winner is declared, until a return is made, there can be no tribunal. The President of the Court of Appeal cannot even empanel a tribunal for us to even advise an aggrieved candidate or political party to approach the tribunal to seek a review of the exercise. To that extent, because the election has not been concluded and we don't have a governorship election tribunal for Osun State for this election, there is no forum in law for the PDP or any other aggrieved person or interested party to ventilate his grievance on the action taken by INEC. The election is inchoate, is incomplete. Whoever is aggrieved will have to wait for the process to be concluded before one can go to court to challenge what INEC has done. Now, can we really fault the decision of INEC? I understand why this matter has generated so much controversy since INEC made that pronouncement. It is expected, given the politics we have in the type of politics we play in Nigeria, the winner takes it all, where politicians see election as a do or die affair. But on the basis of law, I will not advise PDP or Senator Adeleke, who is the leading candidate in the just concluded gubernatorial election, to challenge the decision of INEC to declare that election inconclusive, because there would be no reason in law to do so. Objectively, there would be no reason in law. What INEC has done is not strange. It is not novel. It is not eccentric. It is what we have witnessed over the years.
Exactly. That's the point, bottom line. The same thing happened in Kogi and Bayelsa. Will we say that INEC had been consistent in its interpretation of the law, especially as it relates to what happened in Kogi State?
Well, INEC does not interpret the law. INEC only applies or follows the law. Whether that is true or not, there are insinuations that, there was an election, a National Assembly election in Kogi State.
Exactly. I mean, I say have the records here. During the Kogi by-elections, the results, APC had about 26,860. PDP had 14,843. The margin was about 12,015. Votes cancelled was 19,960. INEC actually declared APC winner. But in this instance, PDP had 254,698 votes, while APC had 254,345. The margin is 353, and the votes cancelled was 3,498. Yet INEC called for a runoff. Oh, has it been consistent? That's a question on most people's lips now, especially as it relates to the, application of that law. If it had declared APC winner in one instance, while now he's calling for a supplementary election in another.
I don't have the details of the by-election in Kogi State. What I will say is that people, they mix a confusion on concepts.
Exactly.
There is a misunderstanding between void votes, rejected ballots or rejected votes, and cancelled votes. People are mixing them up. They are not the same. When a voter casts his ballot, casts his vote wrongly, for example, without clearly indicating which of the party he is voting for, that vote is void. In determining the winner of election or counting the votes, the electoral officers have a duty to insulate the void votes, either because the ballot papers were no vote was casted. Some people would just put in the ballot without indicating what they are voting for. Some people would vote wrongly and so on. Those are circumstances that cannot warrant the decision taken by INEC. Those votes, the summation of those votes is not what we are talking about. The situation under reference in Osun State affects 7 polling units in 4 local government areas of Ife North, Ife South, Orolu, and Osogbo local government areas.
True.
If you look at the press statements by INEC, before I go to the real legal issues involved, what is the reason advanced by INEC for calling for rerun elections in those 7 polling units across the 4 local governments? You have a situation where the smart card readers did not function
So no
in
elections
2
were held.
polling units. You had issues of overvoting in Osogbo local government. You have issues of, I think in Osogbo it was even a presiding officer who disappeared.
Yeah.
You had issue of overvoting, I think in Ife North or so. Issues of overvoting, issues of malfunctioning of the card reader, issues where the election did not hold. We also had a polling unit where there was disruption. That means the election did not even conclude.
Hold.
Again, you also had a polling unit where there was overvoting. Now, these are the reasons that led INEC to say, no, we cannot determine the winner of the election. We cannot make a return in law. A winner has not clearly emerged because the total number of registered voters in this insulated 7 polling units is more than or are more than the margin of win, the differentials between Senator Adeleke and the candidate of the APC. So to that extent, it will amount to disenfranchisement of the people of Osun State for INEC not to have cognizance, to take cognizance of over 3,400 eligible registered voters in those 7 polling units. What does the law say?
Good.
By virtue of section 179 of the Constitution, subsection 2, a candidate is returned, or a return is to be made by INEC. That is a declaration of victory, of electoral victory in gubernatorial election. Is made where a candidate satisfies primarily 2 conditions. The first is that the candidate would have secured the majority of lawful votes cast in the election. The second requirement of the Constitution under section 179 sub 2 is that the candidate would have scored a quota in at least 2/3 of the entire local government areas of the state. That is 25% votes, 25% of the votes in at least 2/3 of the local government. Osun State has 30 local governments. So a candidate has to secure 25% votes in at least 20 local government areas, and also has scored the majority of lawful votes for the candidate to be returned as the governor. It appears clearly that both the PDP and the APC had met the requirement, except that for the second requirement, Adeleke had the majority of lawful votes. However, that is not the end of the matter, because the Constitution, though, has given the basis for which a return is to be made. The Constitution, in the conduct of election, does not operate in isolation. You also have the Electoral Act, which details and clearly articulates the procedure for making a return in election. I'll give you some references. By virtue of Section 89 of the Electoral Act 2010, as amended, the declaration is made. You can only make a declaration by counting the total vote cast. You have to count the vote cast for you to say who scored the majority. You cannot do counting when votes did not take place. Again, you also have Section 70 of the Electoral Act on equality of votes, which really does not apply in this instance because they did not have equal votes. But that is still not the end of the matter. You have Section 53 of the Electoral Act on overvoting, which, as we have seen in one of the local government areas where there was overvoting in a polling unit, and that polling unit coincidentally has 353 registered voters, which is the exact number of the exact margin between Adeleke and the APC candidate. What does that provision say? It says when there is overvoting, that the returning officer has the right to cancel the results of that polling unit and set a date during which a fresh election will be conducted. So if, as INEC has come out to say, we have a situation where in the polling unit there was overvoting and the result of that polling unit was not made, it was cancelled. Therefore, INEC has the right to conduct fresh election in that affected polling unit. You also have a situation where in a particular polling unit there was no voting because the presiding officer chose to run away without performing his statutory responsibility. You cannot disenfranchise people. You also have a situation where the smart card reader did not work in, I think, 2 polling units. Cumulatively, the total number of registered voters in these polling units, the 7 polling units in the following government, is close to 4,000, which will have effect, because that is the principle of the Electoral Act. The question is, will the total number of registered voters have effect on the margin of win between the 2 leading candidates? In this instance, the answer is yes. So to that extent, INEC has the basis in law, and also backed by their guidelines. The 2015 guidelines enables INEC to make that pronouncement. And as we have said, people say, well, when there is a conflict between the manual made by INEC, the regulations, the guidelines issued by INEC, and the Constitution, which one prevails? Okay. The answer is simple. Section 1 of the Constitution, subsection 3, of course, clearly articulates the principle of supremacy of the Constitution. But again, students of constitutional law experts know that you don't read the Constitution in isolation. The Constitution does not work on its own. The Constitution also enables the issuance of subsidiary legislation. For example, you have the Electoral Act.
Good.
Section 153.
Exactly. How deficient is our electoral laws in this regard?
No, it's not. It's not perfect. It's an electoral act that has been amended over and over again. It is not perfect. But the point I'm making is that by virtue of Section 153 of the Electoral Act, INEC has the statutory power to issue guidelines. And we have made the point that even the highest court of the land has validated the power of INEC to issue guidelines as far back as 2015. In the case of CPC and INEC, where the Supreme Court, Adeleke, emphasized that INEC has the power to issue guidelines. And of course, you have a situation where even very recent cases, like we saw in Kogi, the case of Faleke and INEC, involving the legislator from Lagos State, James Faleke, who was the running mate to the then Abubakar Odu. You are aware that as at the time Abubakar Odu died, APC had scored majority of lawful votes cast. APC had also scored 1/4 of votes in at least 2/3 of the local government areas in Kogi State. But we had 91 polling units where results was not made. Elections were cancelled. And the total number of registered voters in those polling units was more than the difference between the votes scored by the late Abubakar Ado and Idris Wada, the former governor of Kogi State. You are aware the matter was contested from the tribunal to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. Chief Wole Olani Peku, can be, to his credit, be described as the god of election petition in Nigeria, argued from the tribunal to the Supreme Court that as at the time Abubakar Ado died, the conditional requirement under section 179, which I have earlier highlighted, had been satisfied. There was no need to declare the election inconclusive. That because James Faleke was the running mate to Abubakar Ado, he ought to have been declared the governor-elect. He should have assumed the position that Abubakar Ado was before he died. The Supreme Court rejected that argument, insisting that INEC had the power to make guidelines, INEC had the power to declare the election inconclusive. So there are so many precedents on this, so many precedents. We have also seen the case even in Bayelsa State and other places, including even Imo State. Okorocha also faced a similar circumstance. Governor Dixon also faced it, and several other places. So the point I'm making is that the courts have validated the practice of declaring election inconclusive when circumstances that I have highlighted arises.
Now, Barrister, September 27 has been fixed as a date for the rerun of the supplementary elections. Do you envisage a subversion of the people's will or a manipulation of the process as envisaged by some?
What I know is that between PDP and APC, vote buying took place in this last election. None of the parties can claim to be a saint. Both of them engage in the criminal act practice of vote buying, paying money to voters to have them cast votes for them. We also even saw cases where people were arrested, agents of both parties, who were giving people money to vote. But to say that it will be possible for people, as we saw in the past, to go to a polling unit, take the ballot papers, take the election material, hijack the election officials, sit down in a hotel or in the house of a chieftain and begin to thumbprint, that is completely out, because card reader has clearly reduced the possibility of that taking place. Until your smart card reader, until your PVC is authenticated by the card reader, you are not accredited. And you can't have a situation where the accredited voters are more than the actual voting. So where we can see influence or an action taken against the will of the people will be a situation where possibly federal might is used to clamp down on the opponents in some area that they have an advantage, or possibly to prevent people from going out to vote. But to say that they can sit down and write figures, I don't think that is possible. What we are saying is that the politicians, the parties, should play according to the rules. If parties comply with the procedure, comply with the rule of law, we will not have anybody coming out after election to cry, to say, oh, I want to go to the tribunal. Because as I have said, the law as it is today, unfortunately, everything is against the petitioner. And I make bold to say this. So when people say, oh, I'm aggrieved by the outcome of the election, I'm going to the court, I wish them good luck. But I know that the state of the law today, it is very difficult to establish that election was conducted in violation of the law or with non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. What's
your assessment of the conduct of this election in terms of transparency, credibility, and acceptability?
No, I said at the commencement that INEC should be given credit. We have never had an election that was this close. 353 votes is the difference between the two leading candidates. We've never had that close. In 2015, people just sat somewhere and wrote figures. In my state, for example, you have the incumbent governor who had almost a million votes. The candidate of the opposition, Umaru Mana, was struggling to have 100,000 votes. He couldn't vote for himself. All the other candidates could not even vote for themselves. But they just sat down and wrote bogus figures, made declaration, kill people, hijack election materials, and they still won in court at the end of the day. But we now have a situation where the process has dramatically improved to the credit of INEC, to the credit of the introduction of technology in the electoral process. We can only say that it is not necessary in a state that the governor is struggling to pay salaries for you to have billions of naira being dissipated to buy votes, for you to have a situation where governors who are not able to deliver on the basic demands of governance will abandon their states, go to Osun State to go and camp throughout the process of election. What are they doing there? They have no business being in Osun State. The governors who were in Osun State have no business being in Osun State. They are not voters. They have no business to play in the conduct of the election. So I don't believe their stay was legitimate. I don't believe so. They had no business being in that state. So we should not have a situation where federal might is deployed, where policemen are sent to harass people and all that. Let the process be credible. Let everybody be given a level playing field.
Now, Adeleke won by a slight majority over Oyetola. What does this portend for the ruling or progressive Congress? I mean, despite the so-called federal might, they had about 9 governors, being deployed in order to boost support for the party, and with the vote buying strategy that was also adopted. What does this portend for the ruling party itself and for our other parties as the 2019 general elections approaches?
To the credit of Senator Adeleke, I think he should congratulate himself, irrespective of what will happen during the rerun election on the 27th. He did remarkably well, even given his credentials. You know, someone who is said not to have sat WAEC or to have had the 5 credit, someone that is called the dancer.
The simple senator.
You know, the dancing senator that has been ridiculed by intellectuals, quote and unquote, having to come that close to the elitist candidate in an election where the who is who in the ruling party took active interest in. So I believe this clearly evinces the unpopularity of the government of the day. It shows that the ruling APC is in its dying days. It clearly shows that Nigerians, it's a clear rejection. It's a clear rejection of the APC. No matter how they look at it, it is a clear rejection of the ruling party. It shows that 2019, if the process is credible, it is almost impossible for President Buhari to return. If APC can perform so poorly in Osun State, with the resources they pumped into the election, the manpower they deployed, the federal might in quotes that they activated to suppress the PDP, and they still couldn't come out as victorious in the election, it shows the government is not popular. So this is also an opportunity for them to be sincere. And you can even see members of the party who are sincere with themselves have admitted that all is not well. They have admitted that all is not well. It is also a retribution against the politics of godfatherism in Nigeria, that you have someone like Adeleke coming out from nowhere, from the blues, basically, to now earn the trust of the people. No matter how you look at it, Osun people know why they gave him that percentage of votes. They know why. So this is an opportunity for Rebesola, the current governor of Osun State, to do soul searching. It's also an opportunity for his party, the APC. They should look inwards. They shouldn't trivialize what has happened. That even with money and all the arsenals, all the power and influence they have, they could not win that election. It clearly showed that something that under all is not well.
One of the lessons that is to be learned in electoral processes has to be do with the death of the era of incumbency. As a matter of fact, many electorates in Osun hinged the loss on complaints of Aregboshola's stand on the welfare of workers, the margin of secondary school students, as well as the same uniform issues. So all this, the era of incumbency, where an incumbent is able to install their stooge in government, seems to be passing away. Are we going to see more of this trend in 2019?
So it seems, this governor, Rebesola, is a controversial person. He came into office and rather than focus on real issues of governance, he started bringing up controversial policies, using religion to polarize the state, bringing up unnecessary controversy on the uniform of pupils, on mixture of Christian and Muslim schools, even to the point of purportedly changing the name of the state from Osun State to State of Osun. Clearly, the man didn't look like someone that knows what he's doing, because those things are trivialities. These are ridiculous things that does not affect the well-being of the people of the state. Again, you have him being the sitting governor who brought out a candidate he thought could deliver. But you now see that people are now saying that candidate is not the best for them. So we are seeing a challenge to the power of incumbency. And we are hoping this will be sustained. Politicians should know that there is consequence for non-delivery on electoral promises. For me, this is the verdict of Osun election, that there is a price to pay for not keeping to campaign promises, that there is a price to pay when a governor is not able to pay salaries, that there is a price to pay when a governor is so insolent that a few days to election, you start throwing money around. You suddenly remember that you are owing civil servants, you are owing pensioners, you are sending airtime, a recharge card to phone numbers of people in the state. People should be able to know that it is time to teach Nigerian politicians a lesson. That is the lesson from Osun State. Whether the politicians will learn or not, it is for time to tell. But what I have clearly seen is that incumbency is being diminished day by day in our political process.
Finally, Barrister, the scourge of vote buying, what should be done in order to nip it in the bud?
Well, it will take a whole lot of work for the civil society, the media, and partners in the electoral process, the political parties, to sensitize people. At the level of enforcement, I am not very optimistic. I don't see the Nigerian police, for example, having the capacity to arrest people who give money for votes. It will be very difficult. We don't have that capacity. The police cannot be able to stop the practice of vote buying. They can do a little, but it's not going to be significant. How many policemen do we have in a polling unit? Very few. Very few policemen in a polling unit. And how many people are they going to arrest when both parties are doing it, both the ruling party and the opposition? And you have a police that is even compromised, that is clearly partisan. How will they be able to do it? So I am not very optimistic at the level of enforcement. But for sensitization, Nigerians should realize that the money, the peanuts that politicians give them during election does not solve anything. How much can they give? 10,000, 20,000 maximum, 5,000 for a vote that will have effect on your life as a citizen. So I am urging citizens, I am urging the people of Osun State to reject the inducement of their franchise. They should exercise their franchise freely, of their own volition, without monetary inducement. Because politicians have now seen that using violence to rig election is becoming more difficult with the introduction of technology. You have electronic transmission of results, electronic collation, even before the physical collation. You have the PVC, you have the smart card reader. These are improvements in the electoral process. So we have to do a lot to sensitize people to begin to vote for who they want, not because of what they are given.
Thank you very much, Barrister. We really appreciate your insightful analysis.
Oh, thank you for having me.